Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our Wolfram language design meetings. This is an incremental language development meeting, and we have a variety of topics today. And our first topic is minimum aspect ratios for trees. So I think I have to move this into the prototype build here. And presumably that top one is the right one. Okay, so the issue is trees that get too long and skinny.
The other one, they're too flat by default.
Oh, yeah, okay. And that happens also for graphs with layered digraph embedding. And it will be lovely to fix that as well. I don't know if Charles is here.
Charles isn't here.
But I would like to propose that that get fixed too. So what are you showing me here? I mean, you're showing me.
So we proposed a heuristic last time that we just use whatever aspect ratio as long as it's at least a fourth. And if it's less than a fourth, to set it to a fourth.
Okay. But we also had a heuristic based on tree splaying angles and things. Is that not correct?
We didn't quite come up with a heuristic for that, but I put a function at the bottom of this section for getting the list of angles if we want to.
Well, do we need it? I mean, what was the, we need a gallery of bad trees, right? Does somebody know that gallery? Christopher.
I think this is the primary one we were looking at last time.
And what does that look at without min aspect ratio? Does it just look completely ridiculous?
Basically, all the nodes look like they're on a single row. You can evaluate that in a non-prototype build.
And it can have an arbitrarily high aspect ratio, right?
Yes. We don't cap the aspect ratio because you can have like very tall, like basically like a path graph.
Vertically. Okay, but even that looks kind of goofy in a notebook if it goes too long. You get what I'm saying?
I mean, what else do you want it to do? I mean, you just want it to.
Well, I want it's too spindly. It's edges, right? If it has edges.
But there's literally nothing it can do other than just add white padding on either side, right?
No, it can. There's a question of what the absolute height actually is, right? I mean, what absolute height does tree by default display at? You see what I'm saying? Let me do an example. So let's say we say, help me make a tree that is just a one element per thing tree. Is that a nest tree? Can I do that with
a nest tree of list one?
Range one. Yeah.
Okay. So I claim. Oh, actually, like that's not too stupid. Okay. What I was concerned about was that, yeah, you see here, okay, if I were to make this less tall, I would be okay. Let's just do this. Okay. How do I make it less tall? Can I just say aspect ratio here?
Yep.
Okay, that's not helpful.
Well, actually, I think that if you have a graph that's like a path graph that's totally vertical like this, that the aspect ratio doesn't affect anything.
Doesn't work. Because look, this is what I want it to look like. Okay? Something with modest connections between each thing. You see what I'm saying? I don't need it to look like something where it's a giant spider tower, so to speak, like this. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is achieved by having that extra vertical height.
Right. So does that ever actually happen though? Like if you run nest tree for 100 or 1,000, if it doesn't happen, then there's no problem, right?
If what doesn't happen?
I mean, if it doesn't format like that.
Well, it does if I make it wider. I mean, it did. Forget the.
I mean, I feel like if you make it wider, that's kind of up to you. You kind of asked for it.
Well, fair enough. Okay, so look here. Well, you're saying that looks reasonable because it's as high as it can be. So if I go to 50, for example,
Or 200. I mean, just okay. It looks like it's never going to be taller than that by default.
right?
I'll make it 1,000 or something.
Yeah, all right. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, my objection is withdrawn. Okay, but what's our gallery of bad trees? I mean, we invented that heuristic with splaying angles for a reason. And it wasn't just talking about these kinds of trees, right? It's talking about more random trees.
We do like random tree of 100.
Okay. Well, let's, so if we take it over here, okay. Looking okay, I think. I mean, why aren't we shrink wrapping the, I mean, in a case like this, why aren't we shrink wrapping closer to the numbers? Well, here, if I say unlabeled tree,
Within node.
is that now, that's still tree layout, right?
Mhm.
Right? Yeah, that's tree layout. There's no, it didn't flip to being graph layout of any kind, right? Is that correct, Ian?
Yes.
That looks pretty nice to me. Now, if I move that over here, is there anything going to be different? I don't think so, because it's not going to hit the aspect ratio limit. Is it going to
Right.
re-render here?
Yeah, if you evaluate that, I think it should be the same aspect ratio since it's at least a fourth already.
Yeah. So why did we make up the splaying angle heuristic? What were we doing there?
We were looking at random tree, like large random trees, and you thought maybe there was an issue with some of the angles being too flat.
Oh, I see. Within the tree itself, but fixable by doing a global aspect ratio change, or fixable within the tree itself? Do you understand my question?
No.
Okay. Are we expecting that we are changing the heuristic for, or changing the layout for an individual tree? Or are we only suggesting that we might make a decision about the overall aspect ratio of a tree?
Just the aspect ratio. I mean,
I
so
see.
there's a more more ambitious idea of to try to actually produce a layout where you have no collisions.
What do you mean by collisions? You mean collisions? I mean, okay, my
Like,
next question is,
like you
why are we
actually
not?
want the data to be taken into account in the tree layout so that you don't have overlapping nodes and overlapping labels.
Oh, I see.
That's
When the
a lot
nodes are
harder.
not just numbers like this. Okay, my
Right.
question is, why are we leaving as much empty space as we are around the numbers in a case like this? We should shrink wrap more. For large trees, don't waste tree space by having just empty leaves, so to speak. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so this is just using framed around it. There might be an option to framed to
There is.
have less space in there.
Let's look at that right now. How will we do that? How will we have an option? How will we put in the option here? Do you understand what I'm asking? So is it a tree vertex shape or vertex shape function?
Pre-element shape function.
Okay. And what would we say?
Like right-hand side function of inset, first argument framed.
Wait. What are we doing here? Inset.
You want a function of inset, yep.
A framed
of slot 2.
Yep.
And
then the option, then the framed options. I mean, this is, look, it's wrong, is my basic point of view. When the tree gets this big, let me just frame margins here. Let's just say, just for the sake of doing something, let's do frame margins to 0. Okay, what else? We need in the inset.
The second argument of inset should be slot 1.
Okay.
So that should work.
I didn't do a damn thing. Okay, why not?
Remove the rule delayed from tree element shape function.
And make it a rule?
Yep.
Okay. Did something. Doesn't seem like it did the right thing.
Might have to specify a style for the frame to show up.
What kind of a style?
Like do tree element style goes to pink. All goes to pink.
What the hell is going on here? Why are there two sets of labels?
So, right, if you use a non-standard, like if you use something other than
Just tell me how to get rid of
tree
those other
element-
labels.
Tree element label goes to all, goes to none.
Okay, how do I get those frames to be sensible?
I guess inside the framed specify background arrow white or something.
I could go with background or the green thing. Okay, we can clearly make this look better. This has too much space, right? This looks a lot better. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I can change the frame margins for that.
Okay, so I mean, first thing is, okay, let's try to get a spec from design, but I think you should change. The first step is just change the frame margins. It's not useful to have the frame margins be that big by default anyway. Makes sense?
Mhm.
But now that doesn't talk about the splaying angles, right? We didn't have a reason to talk about those. What? What? Wait a minute. Did you make a change to this?
No.
Oh, I know what happened. I see what happened. This was the other version of Wolfram Desktop, picking that up. Okay. All right. So I think I agree with the aspect ratio thing, but I think we need to tighten up this. And I'm not certain. I don't understand why these borders are black. Just seems wrong to me. Could we consult design on that, please?
So we updated that for 13.1. This is the spec that we got.
Okay, fine. Well, I think we missed the frame margin spec. But I would like to re-examine whether we want black as the border color. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Is somebody from design here?
Yeah, hi, it's Billy.
Okay. Well, what do you think? I mean, do we? I think at when it's I just don't see any reason to have the frame margins be that big ever.
Yeah, we can go down and try some new
Yeah,
tighter
I mean,
thing.
just yeah. But what do you think about the border color?
I think I still see it as green in my mind, but we could lighten it up a little bit if it's registering so dark for you. Yeah, we
why
could try
don't we
something else.
lighten it a little bit?
The
Okay.
concern was that before we made that change, the border was way too light. So if
Okay,
you
well,
didn't
so
have
fine.
any,
So
too ghostly,
if we didn't have anything in the element,
right?
but you see, I think we've now gone to
Yeah,
unlabeled
the
tree.
direction.
Right, to the unlabeled tree being the main case where you don't have anything in the element. Am I making sense? I mean, what happens if I remove the label from one of these elements here? What does it go to? Does it go to one of these, or does it go to, what does it go to?
No, so the round nodes become small circles and the square nodes become small squares.
Okay, well, so those need to be treated perhaps specially in the case where there's nothing in it to not go too ghostly. But that doesn't mean when there is something in it that needs to have, that it should have a such a dark border. Make sense? If you can, Billy, if you could try mocking something during this meeting, that would be very helpful. And you can
Yeah.
use this code here. If you know that background color, you can stick the background color in here. You can stick the color, the colors in here. You can say frame margin, frame style, arrow, blah, etc. Right?
Yes, let me take a screenshot.
Well, I would use code. I mean, here, I'll use code.
Okay.
Okay, because then we can actually play with it properly. I sent you it in chat. Okay, all right, let's move on. Elided trees design.
Oh, yeah, that's also.
Okay, so is this a real thing now?
No, this isn't implemented yet. So currently, if you have more than 10 nodes or more than 10 children at a node, then all of the remaining ones get combined into a single node with that skeleton with the number of elided nodes. And you asked for that to be modernized.
Yeah, needs to be. I don't think it should be an appearance of a node. I think it should be some other appearance, but I don't know which of these appearances is right. Comments from people.
Yeah, I like the ones that don't have an actual frame there.
Yeah, I think that's what we need.
It's like
Now,
a node
whether-
that's not really one node. It's kind of strange.
I'm sorry?
Like the way we're currently doing it, it's like one node that's really standing for multiple nodes, which is kind of strange.
Yeah. Well, the only thing is that this is going to look disconnected here. I mean, what I kind of favor is that this, I was thinking, this thing would somehow become dotted. The actual edge would somehow become dotted. Maybe that's stupid. Christopher, do you have some ideas here?
I don't have any strong opinion. I think a lot of these look good.
What if it was framed, but the background was white?
Better.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only thing would just be that I think it should be unambiguous that it's a skeleton and not just another node that has maybe some weird characters in it.
Yeah, Avery is suggesting 6 with the elision on top. I think that's not unreasonable. I think the ... is nice. Now, eventually we're going to have a new. What happens in a too big thing here? Oh. Ah.
Too short of that.
No, you see, we see this. Maybe that's what we want to use here. Even perhaps something like that gray lozenge. That makes sense to people.
Yeah.
Except that it doesn't need the thing on the right hand side. It doesn't need the secondary ... right? It just needs the. It's going to look stupid. It was just one ... See what I'm saying?
Right. Because it's at the end.
Yeah. I do like the idea of having something with some gravitas to it to indicate things are being elided, because I worry about things being elided, invisibly elided. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
Okay, if we were going to do a lozenge with a ... how would it work? It would be ...
For some reason, the ... on the right-hand side makes more sense to me than on the left-hand side.
Yeah. Look, there's a possibility of a lozenge here with the ... in it, with a number on top of the dot, dot, dots. Can we try that? Billy, could you mock that up?
Yeah, sure. Which one? I was kind of looking at the, I was trying to figure out the font color isn't working. So I was having some issues with the tree thing for some reason.
What
I'm
isn't
sure,
what font color isn't working? This one?
I'm sure a user issue on my end, not with the
Well,
font color
you
itself.
you can chat with Ian about that.
Okay.
Okay, so here, what we're proposing is taking this kind of lozenge, putting it here with a dot, 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 and a little number on top.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, we need to check what that looks like if it's 6,000 nodes or something, and the number overwhelms the dot, dot, dot. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is better to have the lozenge with the number and then dot, dot, dot after it. Is that clear what that would mean if you saw that?
Yes.
All right. Well, let's try mocking that, Billy, and then Ian, try putting it in. Okay. All
And
right.
should it look? And should it look like how it does right there in the?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
With a gray background and white. I mean, obviously the fonts have to match and so on and some. Well, no, the fonts actually don't have to match. The fonts could be just like this, because that font doesn't match the font. That's a meta font, so to speak, there, indicating meta information rather than the actual raw tape data here.
So it's not exactly comparable, but if you look, for example, at information of plot, there's elision with ellipses and a total for options. And it has the ellipses on the left-hand side. So if we look under options, there's a chevron to open it. And then on the right-hand side after those, when it's closed, it says there's 64 total. Not exactly the same scenario, but doing something kind of similar.
Yeah, that's something we've done.
Kind of nice.
Let's try that as well as the lozenge with the thing on the other side. Okay, let's try something where there's a lozenge like this. I do think that the total is more useful than the number elided most of the time. Do you see what I'm saying, guys?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then it will be something with a styled version of this. Maybe it's in a white lozenge, maybe I don't know what it is, but something which looks pretty much like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, ready to move on? Maximal, minimal.
So these were things that were proposed, and then we had WFR versions put in. We're circling back to them because minimal by and maximal by are one of or two of only three functions that we have a by version for, but not a non-by version for, the other being group by. And basically looking whether these are sufficiently important to have built-in functions
What's the difference
for
between minimal and min?
numerical ordering versus canonical ordering.
I think that's incredibly obscure. I mean, I think the alternative would be an option to min.
But min is vararbs, right?
Yeah.
I know that, but it would be like union.
So what's a use case where the numerical ordering would be different from the canonical ordering, and you actually want the canonical one for the min, for instance?
I mean, I don't really understand where min. Okay, so look, if I say min of ABC, it's just going to do that. Now, if I say minimal of ABC, I have a feeling it's just going to give A.
Yeah.
I see.
It's not completely useless.
Yeah.
Except that it seems very hard to understand.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's sometimes useful to illustrate the ways in which canonical ordering differs from numerical ordering. The classic example is when we do something like sort and minus infinities at the end, because
Well, it's no question of canonical order. I mean, this is
Yeah.
the thing where this will be first of sort of that.
Yeah, it's first of sort and last of sort.
I know, but I mean, that's the thing that I do fairly routinely is say first of sort to get a sample of, a canonical sample of some gathered thing, for example.
Mhm.
Or is it first of numerical sort?
Well, I never use that. No, it usually isn't in my case. I've usually got
I'm saying that, but this proposed function, Nick was saying an important thing is that it's numerical and not canonical.
that minimal is numerical and not
Right. Right. So this would be first of numerical sort.
Yeah, but it also does a different thing because it has this here is returning A, whereas this here is returning unevaluated.
Right. Right. I understand that. Yeah.
I think it's confusing, and I would say I'm not a fan.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any other comments? We can look at it again some other time, but I'm not a fan.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it does exist in the Wolfram function repo. It's somewhat popular, but not
Well,
outstanding.
how popular? Let's see how popular it is. Let's wait 6 months, see how popular it is.
Okay.
Okay. An operator form of fixed point. Seems kind of like something of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, it made sense to me, and Nick's here also who proposed it, but I don't know. I can't think of any reason why we wouldn't do it. There's
Okay.
no syntactic conflict that I'm aware of.
Now, could we do the same thing for nest? It would have to be that. That's a bit weird.
Yeah.
I'm more of a believer in this. This seems useful.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, we can do that. That's pretty straightforward.
Right. Are we really on to WFRs here? Because are you really, there's nothing else that's come up?
There are other things, but there's a lot of people who aren't available at the moment, so
I see.
we're trying to get through some backlogged items
Okay,
here.
fine. Comment. Something I want to talk about, and I don't know what meeting to put it in. I have a plot, and I have stuff that is, so let's say I do this. I say list plot of append range of 10, comma 1,000. Okay. All right. You don't see the 1,000.
Right.
I want an indication that there's something there.
Mhm. An outlier indicator or something.
Yeah,
like
I
that.
want some kind of thing that's a little, pointy thing up here that indicates that there's something missing.
I mean, really, you just want something that shows that the plot range is not,
It's truncated.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
exactly.
I'd be happy to see that there's a thing that goes off to infinity in a few places, where there's just a little nick here at the top, or a little arrowy type thing, like a little carroty type thing here.
Mhm.
It just indicates there's something off screen there.
It wouldn't be on the axis. It would be.
No, I would say it would be up
body.
there. That's the obvious place to put it.
But you mean in the corner?
Yeah, I mean, well, in this particular case, because it's the last element. But I mean, if I say,
Well, I mean, you have to imagine
in
an
line with
arbitrary
where the
scatter plot.
in line with where the data is. Is that what you're saying?
yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying here,
So you should imagine the case of like a random scatter plot where the plot range is just kind of in the middle of it, and there's random stuff in every direction.
Yes.
Right? Well, what should it do?
I'm saying, okay, so I'm saying if the value is x, y, where x is on screen and y is not, y is bigger than screen, so to speak, it should have a sort of on the x, on the level of on x here, it should have a little nick up here. Similarly, in a scatter plot, if it is on screen at the in terms of y, it should have a nick over here.
And if it's off screen diagonally, so it's neither in the X range or the Y range, there's no indication, or it's in the corner?
No. I think there's a nick in the corner.
So I'm just worried about if you have a scatter plot, if you just did a scatter plot, a bunch of random points in a disk, let's say, and then you just set the plot range to be only, 0.1 or something, and the disk is radius 1, then you're going to have nicks all around the frame because there's little points everywhere.
No, I think it depends on how. I don't think that's going to look that stupid.
But also there is a common, nothing else, obviously there have to be a way of disabling it, because there is a common use case that you have a big data set and you only want to show a small part of it.
I agree. It's not obvious this should be there by default. Although what it could be is it could not be there by default, but it could be some mouse, some hover effect by default.
Could only be on by default when plot range is automatic. But if you set a plot range, it's also
that's a good point. If plot range is automatic, you do want it on by default. That's correct. That's what you would want. Yes.
Maybe one other point would be, you could imagine having similar things with line plots as well. I know that there are conventions that people have for, you have little dashes at the end or something if the line plot's going off the scale.
Yes. Right. Well, I agree. Anyway, maybe we can cut this fragment of the discussion, give it to Brett. When he returns, we can discuss this. Avery, does that make sense? Okay.
So this is maybe a jumping off point for a larger discussion, but this is safe take is basically take with an implicit up to, but it also works with effectively a down to specification, which up to doesn't support.
I was wanting this recently. So okay, let me give you a use case. Okay, so let's say I say string take of word list, the English language, -2. Okay, it's going to fail. It's going to give a bunch of messages, right? Because there are words of length less than 2.
Yep.
Okay. I wanted this. I was trying to do, up to -2. By which I meant really down to, in a sense, up to taking up to the -2th element, whereby up to, I mean the span from nothing to, the -2th element, -2nd element.
Right.
Why do we not have that work? Is there a different piece of functionality for down to that's different from that? I don't think there is. I think does that element exist?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little weird that it says up to -2, but I have to say, when I was doing this, that would have been the natural thing for me to put in there.
Right. I was wondering, does having a separate wrapper called down to make sense? And I think it's just going to be annoying.
Super confusing.
Yeah. Up to my negative number is maybe a little counterintuitive, but it's also the natural thing to do. And I imagine the plumbing ought be the same.
What about up to a span spec? Like with a step size. That's ugly, but you want the same behavior somehow.
Okay, so wait a minute. So what you're saying is, basically what it's saying is, if it can be achieved, achieve it. Otherwise, don't.
Yes, give me all the elements that fit this spec, and don't give me anything if it's not big enough.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
It's a misnomer when we call it up to, but it's a very useful behavior.
I agree. I mean, so this normally, okay, let's just see what this does.
I think string take is index, start, begin, end in a list, or start, end, step in a list.
This worked fine.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah. It just
you're right. You're
do
right.
it
You're right.
safely, so to speak.
Yeah.
Look, I think of the possible names that we could use for this concept, up to is not that obscure because the simple cases are very easy to understand.
Right.
And wrapping an up to around this, we could say up to this collection of elements, a subset of this collection of elements. We could think of it as up to this. Yeah, I like this idea. I support allowing up to for all take specifications. I mean, I think the really interesting one is the part specification case, where we don't have that at all, where if you say something like, ABC, and then we said up to
5. Yeah. What does that
how it
give?
return 3, C here.
Oh, I thought it would return nothing.
Yeah, my initial thought was nothing, but
Well, you might be
Boy,
right.
but up to represents up to represents if you just do, wait.
It's a span usually.
Well, okay, yeah, I guess it represents a span. I'm
so
confused
this
because
is
it
a-
only appears in take, and take you can normally just give it an integer, but I guess you can also give it a span. So
But it also works in partition, doesn't it? Up to
right, and that's a
Yeah,
place where you expect
yes.
an integer.
That's the best place that up to was ever. Yeah, that's what made partition useful for me.
we say up to 3. Yeah, it's lovely.
But you can't have a span there. So in that context, the up to is like an integer.
Yes. But in the case of take, and maybe there are other functions where it also allows a span.
Well, but take is kind of ambiguous. I mean, if you give it I'm talking about it up to given an integer argument, right? Because if you give it a span argument, it's a different story. But if you give it an integer argument, in the case of take, it's ambiguous whether it's representing a span or an integer because they do the same thing.
Good point. Yes.
The question is for part. If we did
Yeah.
support it for part, should it be an integer or a span?
It should be an integer because that's the useful case. The useful case is get me the.
Right. And if you
The
want a
problem-
span, you can put a span into your up to, or you can put a span outside of your up to or something like that.
I hadn't thought about a span with up to for individual elements.
Well, the other possibility, which is getting kind of funky, is an up to with a second argument that is what to do if it's out of range.
Yeah, default value.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's totally crazy at all because
like lookup, etc.
Right. I mean, the issue would be, Nick, you were saying you have something to add here.
I was just reminding that I have a function with the different semantics up to in span. So it's basically span treats all as a indication that it's once my maximum number of elements, if all it within a span in some ways, right? If it's a first element, you take maximum number, like supporting any other elements. And up to infinity should be the same as all.
Okay,
And
hold on.
if you follow this logic, you can have to treat it as the same as up to infinity is the same as all.
Yes.
So the integer inside up to should be a number of elements, so that any other specification in the span kind of holds.
Okay, hold on. What is the bottom line of what you're saying? I mean, in other words, are you disputing that up to of a span makes sense? Or are you saying that there's a case for up to infinity being equivalent to all?
It's a little bit tricky. I don't know what I'm disputing. It's a little bit confusing what up to infinity and all means within a span. Because if you usually use span, the documentation says that when you use all there within a span, it tries to extract the maximum number of elements.
Okay, let's take a look. If we say take of this, oh my gosh, take this comma, yeah, that does what I would expect. And now, are you saying that this, well, that isn't going to work, but you're saying that this, or up to wrapped around the whole thing, should work and be equivalent to all there.
And maybe it already works. It's just not consistent with all span elements.
It does work.
It does work. I'm not against it. I'm not disputing that it doesn't work. It's just up to in different elements, like in different places of a span, is not really consistent. It's like when they have up to in the second element, what they actually want to extract is 2 elements, maximum 2 elements that is consistent with other specification in the span. So like starting from -1 with step -1, just 2 elements.
I'm confused. I mean, basically, okay, let's break this off for a second. I mean, so basic point is we want to extend up to, but there is a question of what the precise calculus of up to actually is. So for example, an up to outside of a span versus an up to as in an element of a span, how do those compare? Is that, and I don't understand, I mean, in the case of span range, what is it doing here?
It's converting specifications.
Yeah, it basically converts span with up to and all into just a range. So it's from to.
Oh, I see. I see. I got it. I finally understood what this is. Okay.
And if you want to see an example, like just open the scope and there are all cases listed there with up to in different elements in different position of a span. And what is it? What does it mean?
Okay. This requires more investigation than, so can we break this off, Nick? Can we, I mean, this seems like a good idea. Let's basically plan to implement up to in the negative things, but we need to understand these corner cases.
Yeah, I'll talk to Danny about it when he gets back. And then
okay, and I would like to have the possibility of an up to with a default value, but that may be crazy. Okay, where the default value is nothing. In other words, omit the element. But there could be a non-default value, but that might be crazy. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I also would like to point out, I don't know what up to does in multidimensional. Well, I guess take has each dimension is a separate argument of take.
Right.
All right. Next item. String contains all.
So this is basically all true of string contains Q. It's another one that is reasonably popular. The question is whether it is sufficiently interesting to be a standalone function versus just all true applied to string contains Q.
I think this is not totally uninteresting. I mean, wouldn't it be string contains all Q? And I understand why. Okay, I'm confused here. The reason that this is not working with string contains Q is that string contains Q, if there's a list there, treats them as alternatives. Is that correct?
Correct. It does treat it as alternatives.
Which is slightly questionable.
Mm-hmm.
Itai and I are working on improving the documentation for that.
Gives a list of results for each of the string
Threads.
Does it thread?
Well, that's what it says. Gives a list of results, right?
I know it says that, but
For a list of strings in the first argument, it threads. For a list of patterns in the second argument, it treats the list as alternatives of those patterns.
oh yeah, this is threading the first. Okay. So does it commit to the fact that it treats them as alternatives?
All of the functions in this family do that. So string match Q, string free Q.
I see. Which makes sense for string match Q to do that. But for string contains Q, I mean, I think there's an argument that string contains all Q is not a crazy function to have. I would like to provisionally suggest we have it.
Okay.
I mean, unless there is a pattern matcher wrapper that we could imagine having.
A headdress for the pattern that says.
Yeah, I think it's stupid. I think it's stupid.
Yeah.
I think it's stupid. That's really confusing.
Yeah, I would agree. It's going to be hard to propagate even if we like it. But yeah, I think having the function with an explicit name like that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. String contains all Q. Head Q.
So this is another popular predicate. It's basically a predicate version of match Q.
Isn't that identical to just match Q of underscore blah?
Yeah. It
Underscore
is,
blah, comma, underscore list on, comma, underscore integer.
mm-hmm.
Wait.
However, I agree that
No,
we're
it's not
going to-
underscore. Well, okay, yeah. It's just underscore list or alternatives underscore integer for that second case, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right. I mean, but the thing is, you do see code very often. I do this myself quite often, of saying
If
head of
X.
blah, if head of blah equals string, then do this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not wild about the name head Q.
Right. It sounds like it's asking if this is the head.
Right.
Or it is, yeah.
Head match Q.
But I feel like this is literally a single character away from what match Q already does.
Well, in other words, you're saying if I said match Q underscore list.
Yeah, that's identical to head Q of list.
Yeah, except I never do this. I mean, I should do
Well,
it. Should do it. I mean, I just
that's not a great argument.
There's a difference if your head is a complex expression. You can't use this underscore, right?
Well, can't you say blank of and then a complex expression?
Yeah, you can.
Then you can, yeah. But
Or you can say match Q of whatever you want, compose with head. And that's also the same thing.
Yeah, but for some
I just
reason,
feel like this is the kind of thing that's really easy to do right now. And is
except
also
for some
not a
reason,
super common operation.
well, the head of blah, 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 if head of blah, blah, blah is not equal to list, do whatever, that's really common.
Well, or I mean, if you're doing that in the context of error handling, then I would
That's what
argue that's not the best. Well,
Okay, well, so what should
Yeah.
we do? I mean, if head equals, if head of list equals list, blah, 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 otherwise do something different. That's the common case that I've used it in.
So there's just list queue.
In that particular case, there is.
I just think that it can be very confusing when we have sort of a
Yeah.
function that's like so, similar to an existing thing.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Okay, that raises another question that I had asked on an email, which was about for loops. Okay, I want to know, why do people use them? What can you do with a for? What's easy to do with a for that's not easy to do with any construct we currently have? Is it an incremental return thing? You see what I'm saying? Whatever you do here. I mean, what do you usually want to return from a for loop? I mean, why do you not use a do to do a for loop? Or is it just laziness and weirdness?
I mean, I think there's different paradigms that people are used to.
Yeah, okay, but
It's
that's not
certainly
an
part of
argument.
it.
I want to
Yeah,
know
it's,
whether
it's not an argument for it, but it's
I want to know whether
So
there's
here's a case where I mean I wouldn't use for this, but here's a case where do I think makes it more difficult. Is suppose you have a list that you're iterating over, but as you're iterating over it, you might append to that list.
I see what you're saying.
So that's something where usually, I would probably use like a while loop for that.
Yeah, okay. So in other words, the test is on a structure that is being modified. Right?
Yeah, I mean, the most common case is just you're iterating over a structure that's being modified, but yeah. And fundamentally, that's kind of a dangerous operation because, well, first of all, I mean, you probably have to make an assumption that it's only being modified in certain ways. For example, it's only being appended to. If we're prepended to, that would, complicate things.
So what will be a functional programming way of doing this? Iterating over a structure that's being modified. So what you would have is you would have a modification function. What do you mean by iterating over it?
Why just not nest while?
Right. I mean, I think that's probably the functional programming way to do it is to, I mean, basically anything that you can use while for like this, you can use nest while for. Yeah.
Okay. I still want to talk about this some more when we have a few more people here. But this is a good point, I think, that can we bring this back, the discussion of for and versus nest while versus this point about iterating over structures that are being modified. Let's see, Mohammed on the live stream asked, what happened to the function head map? What did happen to head map?
Do people remember palm reading or something?
No, but phrenology. No, head map is the thing that goes into, let's see, map with heads goes to true, maps into the head of an expression, but there's nothing that maps into the head but not into the other elements of the expression.
What about map at 0?
You're saying map at of f onto g of x of y. Well, that does seem to do it, doesn't it? And how would I do it if I wanted to map all onto the head? So let's say I have this. Is there any way of doing that? I mean, is
If-
MapAt
If the
capable of
position
doing
spec
Yeah.
map app was extended to support patterns, then you could do triple
I mean-
blank comma 0.
Yeah, you'd have to do them each one. You could do 0 and then a list 1 comma 0 and then another list
Well, you could also map at
1
map
comma
all.
1 comma 0.
Needs to end in 0, not begin with 0.
Okay, but you're suggesting that I could do a map all here.
Yeah, which probably has an operator form.
Why doesn't it have an operator form? Why doesn't it have a freaking operator form? I mean, map certainly has an operator form. Why doesn't map all have an operator form? Just seems crazy.
Maybe it just fell through the cracks. Yeah, I mean, it only has one usage. So,
I think it should have an operator form. I think that's just a mistake.
yeah, I think it's just a pretty obscure function.
Yeah.
It hasn't been updated since version 1, according to the docs.
It was not as useful as one had hoped it would be. I mean, yeah. And in a, wow, it's old.
Well, okay, you can use operator apply to map all of F or something.
Right, but I think map all should have an operator form, so that's a definite thing. Now, Avery is commenting that we have a version of head map, SW notes, under miscellaneous. What is this? What the heck is this? Anybody understand what this is? Oh, I see.
Oh, okay, so this is a very different, much more useful thing.
Right. Okay, so let's just take a look at what this is. Okay, so it's now got an operator form as well. Oops. What is that? What the heck is that doing? Why does it say that?
Could you clear all head map?
Oh, yeah, I think it's because it's trying to evaluate. So evaluate the operator form before the other one.
No, because we didn't define the operator form yet.
Oh no, because the second one, it takes X triple under. Why does it take X triple underscore?
It's evaluating the first part.
The head
of
map
the-
here.
Yeah, the head map there because it's X triple underscore above. So it's trying to operate before the operator form exists.
So if I switch these definitions, it should work, you claim.
Theoretically.
Is it a good idea? I'm not sure. Is it a good idea to make it varargs like that?
With the triple blank there. Seems
Yeah.
questionable to me, but let's take a look.
Yeah, let's try it. So try it with the varargs.
Yeah. I don't know. The operator form seems like it might as well be varargs.
Well, actually, right. Presumably, actually, if you just make the X double underscore, then it'll all work. Because otherwise the triple underscore
Oh,
is never
yes,
even
yes,
taken
yes.
advantage of, right?
Yes, that's right. Because in fact, what the hell would triple underscore do?
Well, it would return F open close, G open close, etc. Which also wouldn't be useless.
No, it's not useless. I think there's an argument that triple underscore is right.
Right. But then the operator form can't work. And the operator form is pretty useful.
Why can't it work? Oh,
Well, or at
because
least
triple underscore. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
it'll never be used.
Yes, I see it.
Um,
Right. So really that has to be the right form.
right. So that's an argument maybe for putting that in a list. Because if you put it in a list, then you could give an empty list and it would be equivalent to that triple underscore thing.
No, but I think that it's useful to be able to do the case. This case is useful.
Right. But I mean, the question is whether you have to give X and Y in a list or whether you give, well, oh, sorry, no, you're right. It's ambiguous otherwise. Yeah, fine.
Is the name head map anything other than utterly obscure?
Map through and through map were also suggested.
I usually use through as an example of a totally useless function name.
Yeah, I know. Through was a mistake. I mean, through was a function that I thought was going to be widely used. I can't even remember. I never remember what through does. I mean, through basically
Head map is basically through with a different syntax.
Yeah, it's the syntax of through is what makes it confusing.
Well, but it's also it's less general in a useful way. Like
look, through is to heads as thread is to lists somehow.
right. In practice, the main usage of, I mean, there are all sorts of things that you're supposed to be able to use through for, like if you have, F plus G of X, to return F of X plus G of X. I've never used that. The only thing I ever used through for is in the middle of long composition chains. You can use it to sort of add a fork. So you do through compose list FG, compose whatever you want. And that can be sort of in the middle of your composition, and it does nice stuff.
Is this a useful thing? I mean, the name is ridiculous, but through. I mean,
it is effectively an operator form of through.
Yeah, an operator.
That's kind of what we're talking about.
In the States, we pronounce it thruft.
I mean, this is the same as the operator form of head map that we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's fairly useful.
Yeah.
Except the name
not the
head map
through.
is
Yeah.
Throofed, yeah. But I mean, head map is just really obscure.
Yeah.
But if we concentrate on this form, what will we call this? Head list? No.
So I assume, by the way, you can't give it anything other than a list of function names. Like in through, you can give it, F plus G. We're not bringing that over to head map.
Well,
Head
that's
map
not
is
obvious.
just lists.
I think it's just lists because I think
Well,
anything other
actually-
than lists.
Actually, it'll probably work. Oh, I'm thinking, try giving it F plus G. It might actually just work because map works on F plus G, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
that's
so-
lovely. But this is going to do something utterly stupid.
Indeed, which is why that, that this is why through, I mean, right. This is the
doesn't
problem
work.
with through is that through kind of assumes that you can, I mean, it's the same as the problem with thread, is that you build this intermediate expression and you sort of pray that it doesn't blow up at you, but there's not necessarily a reason to believe that.
Right. Well, that's why thread is not useful on things other than, things. Yeah.
Right. So another use case, this is one that's impossible with through, is if you give it an association of functions.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
So
which should just work with head map with this definition, which would be very nice. But with through, you can't do it because you have to have the association open bracket X, but that evaluates.
that is nice. That's definitely nice.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well,
this
the
is
main
a useful
problem-
function. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the main problem of through is that you can't really make its head unevaluated. It's like I had a few cases when I just wanted to use it, but I couldn't just not evaluate this list of functions because I don't want to use a list head. I want to use something else, and it evaluates, and I can just block it.
You mean like this plus case where we have the 2f of X
Yeah.
or something?
Yeah, and head map would help with that. I just wrap it with unevaluated, and you have to unevaluated map it also in the definition in order for it to work.
In this definition up here. But you're saying that if that definition was done correctly, then this would just work.
Yeah.
This is a useful function. All right, what should it be called?
Map through.
I don't think there's any mapping in it. It's more like
There's definitely
construct-
mapping. There's just no through. There's definitely mapping. There's both mapping and throughing, but map is a name that succeeded and through is a name that failed. So
Yeah, but I don't think that. Okay, so we talked about some of these things here, all applied.
So I think I was actually talking, I think, to Connor the other day about this, and the fake name we gave it was map head.
Why are you talking about map though? There's no mapping going on here. I mean, it's mapping over this.
It is mapping. It's just that it's mapping in the functions instead of mapping in the arguments.
Yeah,
I mean,
know.
a crazy. This is not the way to do it, but well, actually. No, right. Actually, sorry. This is the way it's working, right? I mean, it's literally the same as map. It's just that you put the list at the in the first argument instead of in the second argument.
So yes, I mean that's what this is doing. Yes. What are you saying? What? I mean, yes, this is the analog of.
So it's definitely mapping. I don't know why you're saying you don't think it's map.
Well, because I wasn't thinking of it as map. I was thinking of it as it just seems very obscure that it's mapping.
Head map, take a level spec, like insert X at all of the sub expressions of the first argument according to a level spec.
Maybe, but
Well, I think
just-
I think you could do that, but then it would get rid of this double underscore behavior we have right now.
Is there a way for it to be multiple arguments going into the functions, into the heads?
Well, we do right now. That's why
Yeah.
if you do a head map of f
Yeah,
comma
this-
xy,
Okay.
to do it without
Yeah.
the sub value though, so it's clear what's going on because
Right,
the operator
okay,
form is
that makes
not
sense.
yeah.
But in the operator form, with it, okay, it's varargs in the non-operator form.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It's always a little scary.
Okay, but the name here. So the question is what the name is. Sandra is saying it should be apply all. No, because it's not an apply. Well,
Also, all sounds like map all or replace all, which means at all levels.
that's true.
At best, it would be something like apply list, just like replace list or something.
Well, it will be construct list. That's obscure, but that
Just
is
to use another function that that hasn't really caught on. Yes.
well, construct. It is in fact construct list. Well, except you say it doesn't have to be a list. I don't know. Construct map. That's not that's no good either.
Put something in chat.
Hopefully foo
Yeah.
is not the real
Right.
name.
The level spec is a coherent thing. It's just a question of if we have to pick between that and the varargs behavior.
Right.
Because I think if we want to be able to support multiple arguments for the function, well, right.
Look, one
I guess what you
possibility
could do
is
though
that-
is you can just map apply over your. This is a weird thing to do, but like you can map apply over your list of functions, and then you can give it a list in the X, and that'll do the same thing as the
Look, what
varargs.
about the possibility that the varargs, that the operator form inserts a list? That crazy? That the operator form is equivalent to first argument list of things that were in the operator in the curried piece.
Well, first of all, I think the operator form shouldn't have different. The operator form should just be a different syntax for the non-operator form.
Well, I know, but I'm suggesting. Well, okay, but I'm suggesting
Shouldn't
the
do radically different stuff.
No, I understand, but I'm suggesting that the operator form could package its varargs curried second piece into a list for use in the non-operator form. I don't know if we ever do that. I mean, so what I'm suggesting is that, head map of F.
I think that's kind of crazy because in the single argument case, you really don't want it to do that. And it's sort of weird if it has different single versus multi-argument behavior, if that makes sense. Don't forget, you have to give a list of F and G or something.
Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. Nick is saying we need a name for. What is this thing?
Well, this is basically a thing in the map argument in the definition. So you can apply it to X and then to the function.
Wait, just construct with the arguments the other way around.
Yeah. So it's a hash applied to a first argument that you apply
When exactly is this?
just apply it to X and to F.
Right, it's going to return F of X, right?
Operator. It's like not two arguments, but carried form. Right.
Yes.
So if you had a name for this, we could just use it. That would be this new name of X would be an argument to map, and this new function that we're trying to name would be this name with the map.
Can't you just do it with apply though? Right, like if you had head map, like try this with the existing definition of head map. Just run head map of apply /at, F and G. And then in the second argument, give it a list XY, and that should return F of XY and G of XY. Yeah. So that mimics the behavior we have right now of the head map FG and then the sequence XY.
So this is so that we can avoid the varargs and have a level spec.
Yeah. I mean, this is if we didn't have the varargs, this is how you could get the same behavior, which isn't that
Right.
bad.
Right. And head map could then have options at some point if we wanted to.
Right. Like
Yeah.
head zero true, whatever that means.
Right. Whatever.
Actually, I guess that does have a pretty clear meaning. It's just kind of very unclear when you'd ever want it.
Well, okay, but so you're suggesting right. Yeah, you could clearly you can do this. But the question is, what is this function? I mean, this is some kind of outer product construct or something, or not outer product. What the heck is it?
It's like map, but instead of wrapping something around sub-expressions, you're wrapping the sub-expressions around something.
Dan,
Yeah.
you were here, he'd suggest Pam instead.
Yes. I need to run off here in a second, okay, we need this function. We just need a name. Head map is just too frigging obscure. Okay, it takes a list of functions. I mean, I kind of feel like there's a something applied.
That makes it sound like some operator form thing.
But it is an operator. I mean, if it is an operator form, if the
It
primary
has an operator
case,
form, but it's not. I don't think that's the primary case. I think it's useful without that.
I think it's much more useful in an operator form in some kind of chain of things.
But normally when we name functions, we name them based on their non-operator forms, and they happen to have operator forms.
Well, yes. I mean, we could document the operator form first.
I just think I've used this case of the non-operator form many times. Like, it's a useful thing in that case as well.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not sure. I think I have to go. But okay, to be continued next time. We should start on this one and see if we can come up with a good idea for a name.
Yep. We'll maybe send any suggestions to T-ILD and
Fine.
we'll talk about it again next time.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks much. And thanks to folks on our live